Bold. Heroic. Proud. Triumphant. Brassy. These are just a few words to describe the sound of the brass instruments. In order to keep them sounding as such, there are some suggested maintenance tips and routines that we'll be sharing. Welcome to Music Student 101. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Hello, Jeremy.
Hello, Matt. How are you today?
We are making it. We are pushing along, towards the end of what has been, the strangest year ever.
Yes.
Strange feels like it's a little bit of a weak descriptor,
Insane, bizarre,
terrifying.
Yeah, to say the least, it's been a crazy year.
Absolutely.
But this is our last episode of said crazy year.
Hooray!
Hooray! 2020. I'm not one of those people that hold grudges against years. Doesn't it seem silly to hold a grudge against a time period?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it does seem a little ridiculous to do that. But then again, this year has been worse than most. So, and it's not like everything's going to be over as soon as the year ends. So yeah, it's a little. It's not the most rational thing, but we humans aren't always rational.
No. So. Hey, and that opening music was actually just a little bit ominous. Maybe it was appropriate for. Maybe it was a little bit appropriate for the craziness going on right now. But
an old composition of mine that I had kind of 100% forgotten about and pulled out of the archives. So. Yeah, lucky you, listeners, or unlucky you, depending on your opinion, I guess.
Facets of Being, is that what you said it was called?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
I wish I remembered more about why I called it that. To the best of my recollection, the idea was an exploration of sort of the different masks we wear as human beings and the roles we play and how we have a way of taking one off and putting another one on.
Oh my God.
How, and how that rotates in sort of a, hopefully bringing up the question of, well, who are we that put on the mask? When, if we, is the mask us, or are we, who is the person actually doing the mask wearing, and what did their face look like and things. And, there's all these sort of, pitch collections that shift in particular ways to sort of allegorize that kind of thing. And it was written for my graduate recital back when I was in doctoral school.
Uh-huh.
And my head was full of such concepts. That's about as good as I remember about why I called it Facets of Being. But there you go.
I get a kick out of you bringing up the masks because that is another thing that is kind of relevant to our time period, right? I just wore my mask to the FedEx today. I went to the FedEx because I'm working on a job next week where we have to turn in a COVID test. So ironically, I had to go out there and expose myself to bring in my test. I tested it at home. You swab your nose and you dump the little,
mm-hmm.
and then you bring it in. They pay for it and everything. I just drop it off.
Yeah.
But it was kind of ironic. Because if I just stayed at home.
The colleges are requiring tests before you're allowed back on campus.
Well, I definitely wore my mask when I did that.
Yeah, keep those masks up, people. It's about the only thing we know that works other than the vaccine, which not everybody can get immediately.
True.
So,
Well, The reason we are listening to this intro music is because I wanted to do this episode as a spoiler alert. Actually, you probably read it when you clicked on it. We're talking about instrument care and specifically brass instruments today.
Yes.
And that intro music featured what instruments, Matt?
Oh, what instruments were in my composition? The instruments you heard in that composition were for horns, often called French horns. Although actual horn players tend to refer to them just as horns, not French horns necessarily. So that was for horn quartet. As you can hear, there's a pretty wide range on the horn, right? It can go pretty low, can go pretty high, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, I thought it sounded really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. It's fun to hear that piece again after all these years.
Well, in the past, we've had to apologize to brass players. I don't know if you recall, but there was a time
for not being brass players.
No, for being insensitive to their situations. For example, I think one time we were talking about patterns like on the piano and the guitar, but these patterns don't translate over to the different key combinations and vowels that brass players have to use. So when it comes to that thing, maybe that doesn't apply. And then also we talked about, just sing the note while you're playing it. You know, that'll help you get a better idea of melody. And
well, not if you're a trumpet player, it won't. It'll do the opposite of that.
No. So our good brass players now today, we are going to try and make good.
We're going to do our best, and we're not brass players. We should probably get that disclaimer out of the way up front. We freely admit these are not instruments we play, so we are not necessarily the experts on these instruments and things. But we're going to try to disseminate some good information.
Yes.
Nonetheless, right?
Sure, absolutely. I did find some good articles and watch many videos, so we'll see where we go. And of course, brass players, feel free to correct me down the line if I missed anything or mispronounced anything. For example, I saw lead pipe, and I thought it was lead pipe. And it said, connect the lead pipe to the receiver. And I was like, geez, it sounds like we're cleaning a gun. But anyways, no, it is lead pipe. So little things like that. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, it would probably not be good for your trumpet to be made of lead. That kind of sounds like you don't oil it. It would not be good for your health down the road, and
you use mercury instead of oil to clean it.
You're right.
Bada boom, bada bing. Okay, man. Well, before we get into these instruments, let's go ahead and have a little social moment. And I know that we've had quite a few new reviews, and I'm so happy about them all. And this is one of them I'm definitely happy about.
Absolutely. So this review comes to us from Letho Mazur. I'm going to go ahead and say that's how you pronounce that.
Or maybe Lee Thomas R.
There you go. Yeah, that totally makes 100% more sense. Lee Thomas R.
I like Letho Master better, though.
Like Letho Master. Yeah, okay. But no, so Lee Thomas R. Gives us 5 stars, says 10 out of 10 recommend.
Man.
Yeah, really. And goes on, these guys are incredibly entertaining while also doing a great job at providing comprehensive, high-level information for free. I'm currently getting my undergrad in music theory, and these guys have played a huge part in inspiring me to learn more and more. I simply cannot recommend a better source for early musicians to learn music theory and developed musicians to expand upon their knowledge/skill. Well, thank you so much, Lee Thomas R. Great to hear getting an undergrad in music theory. Keep up the good work.
When we set out to do this podcast, that was really our target audience was the, undergrad music people.
We're sort of the undergrad musician struggling through theory. Over the years, our perspective has broadened to just anybody who wants to know more about musical stuff. But yeah, he would have been in our core audience back in the day.
We always love to hear that it's we're kind of broadening people's understanding and appreciation for music, but when we hear that people who are actually in the School of Music are getting good grades with this, it's just an extra little sprinkle.
Yeah, isn't that great? Isn't that inspiring?
Totally, man, totally.
Yeah, and for free, as Lee Thomas R points out, nonetheless. Although we do encourage you to subscribe to our Patreon page. What is that page again?
Yes, patreon.com/musicstudent101. And yes, if you want to, you can actually donate a monthly, be it $1 or $2, however much you want. For $1 to $2, you can actually you have access to anything on the Patreon site, which is usually our special content and a couple of extra videos and extra episodes based on people's, requests.
Yeah, extra goodies.
People who put in $3 or more, we used to say would get a coffee mug, but like I said, I'm not sure. It'll be something cool, and you'll find out when you go to the site. Most likely drinkware until I run out of coffee mugs. And people who give us $5 or more a month can actually request their own special episode.
Yeah, at least 15 minutes of us answering your question about music.
Or anything, I guess, really.
Or anything, I guess. Yeah, you can talk about anything.
Stay away from physics and such if you can.
Well, I mean, you'll get our answer on physics, however, whatever that's worth.
Yeah, it's a private site. Only under 100 people will hear it, so that's okay. But anyways, one of our great new Patreon patrons is a friend named Ken Wilson.
Yay!
And Ken is listening from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Very nice.
I'll just go ahead and get into it. Ken says, "Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Matt. It's been a crazy year, right? My family and I..." Yes, it has. "My family and I are fortunate to have been well throughout this year's challenges. Unfortunately, I've been too busy to participate in my music hobby. I love your show. I've been listening since the beginning. Long-time listener, huh?
Yeah, seriously.
I was lucky to be searching for something just like you've now created on Apple's podcast service at the time you started releasing your first episode. I listened, subscribed, and gladly gave my 5-star review early on. Hey, thanks again."
Excellent.
Reviews.
Thank you.
Back to those reviews, they boost our presence, thereby telling more people about us and spreading the music love and the music knowledge.
Absolutely.
Always a good thing. Ken continues, "You guys are great teachers and you make it fun. I'm always looking forward to your next episode. When I get the chance to jam with others, I prefer to play the bass. Do you know anyone else that likes the bass?" asks Ken.
Do we know anyone else who likes the bass?
Yeah, or even likes to play the bass.
Or even likes to play the bass. I don't know. Might have to give that some thought.
I feel like we don't give bass enough love on this show in general.
Yeah, we totally don't give bass enough love on this show.
Ken continues, "When I tinker around on my own, I usually grab a guitar. Thanks again and keep up the good work." So, thank you very much, Ken. When I tinker around, it's usually on the keyboards or the guitar myself. I usually don't play the bass until I'm with people, or if I'm trying to put down a bass line for one of these recordings,
Yeah. For me, I'm the same way. If I'm just tinkering around, it'll be on the piano, on the guitar. I will occasionally tinker around on the bass. But it's usually to come up with bass lines, bass specific kind of things, or bass jams.
Sure.
When I'm songwriting or composing, I'm more likely to go to the piano, really, just so I can have all my possibilities sort of laid out, in front of me like that, without thinking of really instrument specific considerations. Although the piano has instrument specific considerations.
True. But you can map it all out. Like you say, you could get a bass line, you can get chords, you can get a melody all within right in front of you on a piano. But yeah. And with your 6-string bass, don't you have a 6-string bass, Matt?
I do.
There's more tinkerability, I think, with the 6-string bass if you really want to get into it. You can play chords and stuff.
Yeah, you can play chords, definitely. A lot of things is just less hand motion, or different hand motion, I guess. So you've got 2 octaves worth just right there in one position, right, in one hand position. So it's a lot of things are just easier. But you can play chords, you can play higher notes, you can do some interesting stuff on it. But it's almost unique into itself as an instrument, the 6-string bass.
I think I'd be doing a lot more tapping on a 6-string if I had a 6-string. Yeah.
Thumping and finger tapping can be more challenging, but if you get good at it, they could also be really, really cool. I mean, you can almost replace your rhythm guitarist with finger tappings and with harmonics. Harmonics on it are great with those upper strings. Yeah.
And if you're slapping, you can replace the drum player. So
Right.
there you go.
My goal is to only ever need a bass player in my next band. It's like everybody else is fired. I'm doing everything now.
Matt and my bass. That's the band.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Enough about bass players.
Yep.
But it's cool to meet a new one, right? Thanks again,
Always.
Ken. Let's move on to our listener mail, shall we?
Indeed, let's do that. So we have a mail from Dr. Andrew Paul Davidson, who is a professor at the University of Cambridge in England,
Nice.
in the Faculty of Divinity, and he is also a fellow at Corpus Christi College.
All right. Cambridge,
yeah,
that's
serious credentials there.
Yeah.
And he writes, "Dear Matthew and Jeremy, I thought that you might be interested to know that you were mentioned in the main Church of England newspaper this week. Church for Times. I did not know that. Did you know that?"
I did. I wanted to surprise you. And this was actually a good while ago, but it still happened.
Wow.
I'll share the link with you. I meant to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But aren't you pleasantly surprised to hear that, Matt?
I am pleasantly surprised to hear that. He says they are running a piece each week on what is keeping people going and their spirits up in these strange times. The brief suggested mentioning a film, but I brought that around to a podcast and to the podcast that I am so much benefiting from at the moment, namely yours. You are mentioned in the middle column of the second page. I'm not particularly proficient on any instrument. I can slaughter pieces slowly on the piano. Yeah, tell me about it. I feel you. And have some rusty guitar, but mainly I've been a singer, which is an instrument.
Absolutely.
That is limited mostly nowadays to singing in the liturgy. I'm a priest in the Church of England, but most of all, I am a listener. I took music theory lessons for a year or two around 2005 to 6 with a couple of people, including a young pianist, Joseph Middleton, who has gone on to become one of the great accompanists in the classical world, which has been good to see.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that knowing theory would help me be a more appreciative listener. I can tell you it's helped me do that. Since I spend so much time listening to music, I think it has. Your podcasts have helped me move some way from knowledge only in my head to being able to hear it. Although I don't have the ability to do anything like as well as many people I know. Thank you again for your fantastic work. With best wishes, Andrew. So that's awesome.
And I don't want to sound like an infomercial salesman, but you just keep on listening and you will be able to one day hear like everyone else hears music, It's
practice.
Progression, always be listening. But yeah, isn't that exciting? Wasn't that cool?
That's wonderful. Yeah. Got mentioned in the Church of England newspaper.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Andrew Paul Davidson.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's wonderful news. And thank you for all the kind words. And yeah, just keep on. Sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge, I think, to take what we understand conceptually, things like music theory, and then sort of apply it to our music, right?
Oh yeah, as we play it.
Which is not only conscious but subconscious, not only a brain thing but a body thing. All of these, and the only advice I have is to not force it. To work on understanding it, and then in understanding it, it will start to come out and be present in the music you hear and present in the music you write. And the music you create. It's just a matter of sticking with it, practicing, listening, thinking about. And
analyzing.
Right. Yeah. And it'll get there.
Well, I think we want to thank again all of our listeners for engaging with us and supporting us and, putting the word out and everything. So, again, thank you. And we're going to get on with this show, shall we?
Yes, we are.
Brass instruments. Okay, let me name some sources here before I get into it. I got three main sources that I kind of went to for this
Okay.
for this information. The Brass Family. That's the name of the article by the Oregon Symphony. That's where I found it at www.orsymphony.org. Learning Community Instruments Brass. And it doesn't seem to have an author cited. A lot of these people just have a music group that they cite, for example,
Right.
proper care and maintenance of brass instruments by the Music Arts Division of the vault.musicarts.com. That was another source.
Okay, yeah.
No author. It's just, I guess, a group. Now, if I
It's
spend
not
all that
like they
time,
consulted a group of brass players in their ensemble.
yeah, but still somebody did it. They deserve the credit in my mind. The editor, the compiler, I don't know.
I'm inclined to agree, but there you go.
Yeah. And then finally, I do have one by Wayne Teneby, and this is How to Keep Brass Instruments Clean Inside and Out, and this is on Yamaha.com. Now, I figure Yamaha knows instruments, if anybody knows instruments. Well, I know they know pianos and basses so far, and guitars. I just assume that bleeds over to brass. Okay, so let's just get into the instrument. There's two main types, and there's some confusion in my mind because there's a lot of instruments that fall into the brass category that have zero brass. Okay, but some of these
You mean like zero brass as in none of the metal?
No metal. Yes. And like the Alf horn, the didgeridoo, and conch are all classified as brass instruments, right? Where there's other instruments that are fraught with brass, such as the saxophone.
The saxophone, yeah, which is actually considered a woodwind.
Uh-huh. So
or a wind, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. What defines?
Maybe I can offer some clarification.
Please.
And I'm truly interested in what brass professionals think about this, but this is just my understanding, as it is now. The main defining thing that makes something a brass is not necessarily the material it's made out of, as confusing as that is given the name, but is actually the fact that it produces sound via some kind of mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you kind of, purse your lips and into into some kind of mouthpiece, which then vibrates, which sets the air inside of the tubing of a trumpet or horn or what have you to vibrating, and that's what creates the musical sound. And it is that mouthpiece that makes something considered brass, which may be why something like the conch and the didgeridoo would qualify, whereas the saxophone, which does not have a mouthpiece but a reed, does not.
Right, because when you're playing a brass instrument, you're basically taking this, and turning it into something beautiful. Yeah, because the vibrating of your lips vibrates the mouthpiece that you press your lips against, which in turn vibrates the column of air inside a brass instrument, and that air is pushed out the bell, the end, right, as a musical note. Which musical note depends on how much tubing it went through, and that's a part of the machinations of how brass instruments work. Yeah, man. So, that's a very good. I could not have defined that better in such a short amount of time. I think I said the same thing in way more definite detail here, but we'll get into that.
I'm used to having 10 minutes to talk about this before I have to go on to something else in orchestration. So.
Well, 10 minutes well spent. Okay, so we have two main types of instruments, brass instruments, and that would be valved and slide. Now, I'm going to spend a good bit getting into valved as they are more common in a little bit. But why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about the slide, which I'm thinking is the trombone, right?
That's the main one that comes to mind for me. Yeah, the trombone, of which there are a tenor and a bass, right? The basic idea is like we said, there's this physical property of a column of air being blown out this brass instrument, and that's what creates the musical note. it's basic physics that a longer thing vibrating will cause a lower note, right? So when it's this column of air that's vibrating, we make it longer, and there go the note lower,
Right.
by on the trombone. And we've all kind of seen a trombone with that slide. As we slide it out, it means that the air has to travel through more tubing, ergo the column of air is longer and the note is lower, right? And yeah, boo, yeah, so a combination of this and what brass people call the embouchure, the exact shape of your lips as you're pressing on this mouthpiece, is what creates the actual notes. So there are 7 positions, each lowering the fundamental of the note as you sort of move the slide out, and you use the slide to create the correct fundamental, and then you use your the embouchure, the shape of your lips to create the right note in the overtone series above that fundamental. Yeah. To get the note that you want. Yeah. It's it's a sophisticated thing, It's not laid out the way it is on a piano or even on a guitar or violin, this is you really have to envision the combination of slide position and mouth shape to get the notes that you want.
These are very complex instruments. You just have you have a guitar hanging on your wall. Just take it down every now and again, play it with rusty strings or whatever. But this is not that. This is not that at all.
This is not that. Yeah. So that's the basics of how a slide works.
The valved instruments are commonly the trumpet and the French horn, the tuba, things like that. I think euphonium also counts as that, and there's probably a few other less common examples. But if you just want to take a little journey through this instrument, we can do that.
Sounds great. Let's do that.
Okay, so first off, you have the mouthpiece, which is, like Matt was saying, the part you're actually contacting with your lips and blowing into, where you have to have that embouchure. You have the rim. Again, that's the part your lips touch. The cup, which is connected to the rim and connects that to the shank, and the shank attaches to the lead pipe. So mouthpiece to the lead pipe. Lead pipe takes a short trip over to the valves.
Okay.
And these valves contain holes that reroute the air through different tubes, like you were saying. So I guess in the resting position, they're probably a higher note, and then you push down and it opens up the pathway to vibrate a larger column of tube.
And lower that fundamental. Yeah, same principle. But instead of sliding like a trombone where you're just literally lengthening the tube, what you're doing is, as you say, pressing on a valve, which reroutes it through extra tubing and thereby lowers it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out there's 2 main types of these valves. There's the piston valve, which is actually just pushing the hole down, and it connects with the other hole by being pushed down on the key.
Right, yeah.
And then there's the rotary valve, which I was not familiar with. Rotary valve, I guess you would say. And you see these on French horns and euphoniums, where instead of the hole dropping right over the hole, it actually turns 90 degrees into the hole.
Interesting.
And for some reason, that results in a more kind of mellow and, I guess, round and broader sound. And I'm not sure why that would be. Maybe because if it's rotating, it's not as a lockdown. It's more legato than staccato, is maybe what they're saying.
Maybe the air not bending as sharply creates fewer overtones, less of a sawtoothiness, and
Well, it's really more in the transition from note to note, actually.
I see.
So they say they just have a more lyrical sound, right?
Okay.
Yeah, smoother transitions between notes, and that's why these French horns are often used for more lyrical passages in classical music. The tuning slide. So we got up to the valves, right? Now each of these valves have their own little tubes that come out of them, again opening up more, air column. And each of these valves has its own little slide. I guess we can fine tune on the tuning slide. So I guess when you're tuning your instrument, you can make mild adjustments to the overall pitch.
Doesn't a horn have a little a tuning slide like on the thumb where you can kind of pull it or am I being crazy?
I don't know. It sounds like most of these instruments have some form of fine tuning
Yeah.
mechanism. You know, we're learning about this as we go as well.
We're learning about this as we go along. I know you can you can stick your hand up the bell of a horn and, kind of, depending on how far you've shoved it in, kind of sort of fine tune the note, to make it just a little sharp or flat,
That's interesting.
that way. Yeah.
But you're also muffling it a bit, aren't you?
One would think.
One would think. Oh, another cool thing about the tuning slide, if you want to call this cool, is they can be pulled out and spit can gather in there, so you can pull it out and also empty spittle.
Oh, yeah, the spit valve.
Uh-huh. And yes, each instrument also has kind of a general spit valve that all of these other valves can empty into. So
yeah,
you just take out the little spit valve and you dump out all the spit, because when you're blowing into the instrument, your breath is condensing, your breath is gathering, the moisture from your breath is gathering within the walls of these tubes, right?
Yeah, these things accumulate spit. Let's just call it like it is.
Spit, yeah. Well, with the spit valve, you can all dump it with one big swoosh.
And don't empty the spit valve onto the head of the person playing in front of you. It's not nice.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit, actually, because there's so much that goes into this instrument, and this is one of those things that I would have never thought about until I witnessed it at a very early age, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
But anyways, so after the air moves through the valves and through their tuning slides and tubes and extra tubes, I guess, it basically goes from there to the bore and then to the bell. The bore being the column that it kind of folds out into the bell, I guess you would say. It's kind of conical.
Right, yeah. Kind of increasing in size.
Yes, as you go. And I guess the sound just develops or is somehow spread out. It's like the bell, when I think about the brassiness of a brass, I tend to attribute that to the bell, but I might be wrong about that, But I just think that the effect of that bell, kind of like the little record on the old.
Yeah, it's a natural amplifier.
Yeah, it's
just like the little thing on the old Victoria or Victrola.
Victrola, yeah.
Record players, yeah. It acts as a natural amplifier that makes them louder. Brass are often thought of as the loudest instruments of the orchestra. Mm-hmm. The ones with the most power. They're the ones that are often brought in for the big dramatic moments. Yeah,
heroic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the main takeaway, I guess, from this episode, which would be that the more you take care of your instrument, the better you take care of it, the better sound it will produce.
That is true of any instrument.
So, next we're going to get into some suggestions for instrument care for your brass instruments.
All right, awesome.
And we'll start with the outside, and we'll work our way in. So, exterior care.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in many cases, brass instruments will be coated in a lacquer and or thinly plated in gold or silver to protect the metal beneath. Isn't that funny that you're plating a brass instrument in gold and silver to protect it? Isn't that ironic? Don't you think?
Yeah, well, yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I guess so.
So people often use tuning slide grease and valve oil, and sometimes contact with that will cause fingerprints on the instrument. Which can be easily cleaned. This is mainly cosmetic, but they can easily be cleaned with a soft cloth to which a dash of furniture polish is added. And this will also
furniture polish, huh?
Yeah, isn't that a surprise? And this will also protect the finish, thereby allowing for fewer and further between cleanings. Now, if said polish contains wax or silicone, it will reduce water spots that can collect on the metal. And I guess the idea is wax or silicone, the water just kind of beads off of it or doesn't collect on it as easily.
Right.
But anyways, if the instrument has a plated finish, you want to remove grease, grime, and fingerprints with a glass cleaner. So we got people saying glass cleaner, and we also got the same article suggesting furniture polish. So over time, the silver-plated instruments will tarnish, and even just from exposure to oxygen. So this can be avoided. I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, I wonder if you can get some cleaner from your music store that's designed, because I know with guitars and basses and things, people recommend furniture polish and stuff to clean them a lot of times. But you can also buy like specific cleaners specifically for that instrument, and it may just be the same stuff. It just has a guitar on the bottle. Who knows? But yeah, you do. I wonder if that's also true with a brass instruments. Like you go to your music store or something like that, you can probably just pick up a bottle of like brass cleaner.
Well, now that's why I'm staying away from sponsored articles when I'm looking up for my information.
Right.
Because even at the end of the Yamaha article, it's like, and Yamaha has this fantastic little microfiber
it
cloth.
has a fantastic cleaner for it's probably just glass cleaner, but they've got a picture of a trumpet on it.
I tend to like to hear the organic approach typically, even if it's just dish soap and water, and a rag.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Furniture polish versus glass cleaner. That's just weird because to me, glass cleaner, I think about Windex cutting through oil and stuff like that, and fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
I think about
furniture polish. I think more of like wood. It's
So maybe it makes sense to hit it with a glass cleaner and then top it with a furniture polish.
Yeah.
Maybe so. I don't know. Anyways, over time, the silver-plated instruments will tarnish, and even the gold instruments a little bit. And this happens from exposure to oxygen. And this can be avoided with silver polish cloth impregnated with a dry polish. So there's all these different things that you have to do, sounds like, all these different polishings and cleanings. The same combination is equally effective when cleaning gold instruments, like I say. Exposure to sunlight can also initiate the tarnishing process. Did you know this?
I guess I never thought about it, but now that you say so, yeah, that makes sense.
So obviously, to avoid extended exposure to sunlight and the elements in general, just keep it in the case when you're not playing it. Right?
Always good advice for any instrument.
And compared to wooden instruments and stringed instruments, brass instruments are a bit more resilient to humidity and temperature. But ideally, you want to keep it around 65 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity level of 50%.
Yeah. Good environment for your brass and for your brass player.
And for your brass player, yeah. That sounds ideal because I'm pretty comfortable in that temperature range.
Yeah, you want to keep your human in about 60 to 72 degrees, and yeah.
Keep it in the case. Is that just my bed? I'll just stay in my case. Oh, the digressions. Okay, let's talk about interior care.
Okay.
Now, it's story time, Matt.
Yay.
I want to share a time when I first realized what went into these instruments. When I was, I guess maybe in the 5th grade, I was an altar boy at St. Paul's Cathedral, Catholic Church, over here in Birmingham. And there was it was a big deal, I remember, one year because it was Christmas time, and they had an ensemble from Paris come and play for the service. And it was a French horn ensemble. A French horn ensemble from Paris. And so I was up on the altar while they were doing this, and it was beautiful. It was such a big deal, But I kept on looking. At one point, I looked down and I saw this guy kind of unscrew, and then this little drop of spit just kind of fell out of that, and it landed right on the floor. And I said to myself, what? And so I watched a little longer, and sure enough, other people were doing it. And there's no little cups or spittoons or anything like that. And like you said, I bet you there's times where people have emptied spittle on their person in front of them. Oh,
yeah. Well, I've heard marching school, high school marching bands, rather. Yeah, oh man, I shouldn't say this because it's encouraging delinquent behavior. So don't do this, kids.
Oh, geez.
I have totally heard it, like as a practical joke or just as a way to be mean to people or something. They would empty their spit like in the top of their marching band caps or something, which they wouldn't know, And
oh God,
yeah. Like I said, don't do that. Don't do that.
And don't have spit fights.
Yeah. But yeah, seems like they could have given them little cups or something, so they're not dropping their spit on the hardwood floor of that cathedral.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's a big part of it. And all that to say that because of saliva and organic material getting trapped within the metal tubes, there is buildup that needs to eventually be addressed.
Yeah.
Now, why do they say saliva and organic material? Is there organic material beyond saliva going into this instrument?
Who knows?
I can't think of any, but I'm sure they had a need to separate the two.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We won't.
They're just covering all their bases. It sounds like.
We'll let your imaginations run wild on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. My inference from hanging around brass players a little bit has always been that there is definitely a type of etiquette and professionalism or surrounding the spit valve, and when it is and is okay, when it is and is not okay to empty it. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that etiquette, professional etiquette is. Yeah, but my inference, my understanding is that there's definitely some kind of etiquette around that you're not typically, given just, or should not, think of yourself as having carte blanche to just empty your spit valve whenever you feel like it.
Right.
Now, like I say, I don't know what that etiquette is. I would love to hear some opinions from some actual brass players on this, because
Please.
I think Jeremy and I are both finding the whole spit valve a little hilarious in a very juvenile way. So
I know. Good God, you're a doctor. I'm not a doctor. You're a doctor. You don't have that excuse. No, but it's true. It's just a crazy thing. It was a crazy thing to behold, and it's a crazy thing to think that people do have to keep up with. Now, as a bass player, I'm cleaning my strings and wiping off little pieces of, dead skin cells and oil and stuff like that.
Yeah, finger sweat from your grubby little hands and all that stuff. Yeah, but there's very little actual spit involved. Well, I say that, I don't know.
Actually, if sometimes I will lick my fingers if I'm about to play a really fast part and my fingers are getting a little bit raw, or I'll get some nose grease. I'll rub my nose. That's kind of gross, I know, but it kind of lubricates my fingers a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
well,
maybe.
if you're playing under really hot stage lights too, I mean, you're just wiping sweat off with your hands just without thinking about it anyway.
So music is gross. Let's just admit it and move on, shall we?
Well, I say all the time, music is as much off the body as it is off the mind.
It is off the body. Yeah. I like that. I think you put that way better than I just did. Let's talk about oiling these valves here.
Okay, yeah.
So again, these valves are kind of where the main action happens, the main moving parts.
Yeah. And that is not dirty, by the way, oiling these valves. Don't. That is not a double entendre. Get your minds out of the gutter.
Oh, there you go again, Matt. Okay. So, anyways, you want to drip 5 or 6 drops of oil down the lead pipe and through the receiver, which connects the mouthpiece to the lead pipe.
Mm-hmm.
This process is pretty necessary as it slows the corrosion process, and it also prevents organic material, there's that word again, from sticking to the inside of the lead pipe and the valve ports. Also, in addition to oiling, you want to swab it a little bit. It's recommended that you swab out the inside of the lead pipe and any other components, interiors, with a microfiber cloth or a swab. And when they say swab, they got these sticks with these big old balls on the end of them.
Right.
Appropriate for the instrument. I mean, I don't think they're talking about little ear cleaning cotton
like
swabs.
Q-tips or anything. They're talking about a specific thing. Yeah, okay.
Right. Now, the swabbing process also removes debris and moisture. And apparently, emptying out the water key only rids the tube from about half of the moisture. So, when you're blowing into the instrument, when you do remove the spittle from the water key, or what did we call it earlier? The spit key, the spit valve.
Spit valve. Yeah.
The spit valve. There's still a good portion of moisture within the instrument that clings onto the inside of the metal tubing. So this is condensation, which you can empty out. You can't really empty this out until the instrument reaches room temperature or cools down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I've seen a lot of these videos that have these cleaning snakes where you have a flexible rod, like with a little cloth or a cloth ball at the end of it.
Yeah, I've seen musicians using those too.
Seems like that would be pretty useful.
Yeah, real handy to get up in there and get all of that moisture and spittle and whatever else out.
But then you got the when I think about how complex the French horn is, I'm sure it gets pretty. I know that you can remove a lot of the slide valves and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can take that instrument apart to some extent, but yeah, I bet cleaning it takes a long time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to smaller brass instruments, you want to rinse the lead pipe and the tuning slides with dish soap and water, and just kind of give it a good run through with your handy dandy cleaning snake. Same kind of thing. But for larger instruments such as baritones, euphoniums, and tubas, you can actually remove the first valve and insert a pull cord through the lead pipe port inside the casing. Now, the swab is then pulled through the lead pipe, exiting out of the receiver, which is what connects the lead pipe to the mouthpiece. Okay, so we've been talking about oiling, and along with oiling, also there's the slide grease, which you want to, just like it sounds, you grease the interior of the slides. And these things, they do three important things. It allows for smooth operations of the valves and keys, which are the main moving parts of your instrument. It keeps dirt and debris from settling. And then finally, it keeps your parts more airtight. So with just a little bit of grease or oil in between the metal parts,
yeah,
it's cutting off airflow that would otherwise escape this perfect closure of tubing.
And perfect closure is probably important if I were to take a guess at it. You don't want air escaping if you can help it.
Yes, because I think that the instrument is probably built and designed for a certain amount of air pressure and so forth.
It could mess with the tuning if there were a whole lot of the intonation, if there was a whole lot of air escaping in various parts. So yeah, that's probably important.
And I don't know what amount there is escaping when this happens, but I imagine it's less efficient. You'll have to breathe harder and
and nobody wants that.
And re-up, more quickly, more often.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main gist of the oiling routine and the cleaning routine and some of the instruments that you would use to do that. Now, as far as how often it's recommended you do this, when you first get your instrument, it's recommended that you oil it and play it as often as you can. I'm talking every day if possible.
Kind of like you're breaking it in, sort of.
That is exactly what it is, breaking it in. These moving parts are getting used to playing or moving together. And it's almost like maybe kind of setting your instrument in. But yeah, I think breaking it in is just the perfect way to say that, really. So you got to do that for the first month at the very least. And after that, they're suggesting that you can oil it every 2 or 3 days. And then change the oil every couple of months. I imagine changing the oil just means completely cleaning out the instrument again and on the inside and outside, and then putting all new oil in.
Yeah, do they recommend like washing it out, like emptying the oil and
I bet you that's where the dish soap comes in. Aha. Hey, brass players, hit us up. Let us know if we're doing a good job here.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, that's kind of the recommended routine. And then when you're putting your instrument away, you might want to obviously blow out as much moisture as you can without adding more, right?
Sure.
You blow into an instrument, you're adding moisture, so that seems tricky. But it's also a good idea to remove the mouthpiece because sometimes they will get stuck. And it's recommending that you try and lock the slide and secure any moving parts,
Yeah.
And I think about that, like I can see, like even if you're driving in your car and it's vibrating, you might have had your instrument tuned pretty well where you wanted it. But if you don't have the slide locked, it's going to be moving all around and coming out of place.
Yeah, I mean, we know that with stringed instruments too. I mean, you'll get them out of the case and they won't be in as good a tune as when you put them in there, just because the tuning pegs have gotten bumped just in transit and stuff. Yeah.
So, I think that's just about all we have to say at the moment as far as taking care of your brass instrument.
Well, I've learned a whole lot about brass instruments. Everything except how to play one, of course, which I absolutely cannot do.
And it's funny is because of all these mechanics and everything we've discussed so far, and valves and rotary and slides and whatnot, to me, it's still more intimidating to try and think about picking up one of these instruments and try to make some music with it, right? So I really think that
I wonder if brass players find string instruments intimidating.
I hope so. Because I really feel like this is an instrument that you really kind of commit to. You know what I mean? It's like almost like taking care of a pet.
Yeah, but when you think about it, what's an instrument that you don't have to commit to caring for if you want it to have a long life? I mean,
well, let's say that the brass instruments are like the dog, and then maybe my guitar is like a cat.
Will largely take care of itself.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we do all sorts of things without even really thinking about it to maintain the life of our string instruments, though. We set them on stands or hang them up on wall hanging stands so that there's not pressure on the neck. I mean, we regularly replace the strings. Some people boil strings regularly, to boil the dirt out. And there's all kind of stuff we do to keep strings in good care. But it just I wonder if that is intimidating for brass. The way it sounds intimidating to brass players, the way caring for a brass instrument sounds intimidating to us.
Maybe so.
That would be an interesting conversation to have.
I think if you're playing a brass instrument, you're either in a marching band or an orchestra, right? I mean, for the most part, or maybe a polka band or something like that.
Or a chamber group. That there are also plenty of those.
But I guess there's going to be some director that's going to be like, your instrument sounds like crap. Are you cleaning that thing? Someone's going to keep you to task if you're not the kind of person to do that regularly, which I'm not. I can imagine myself having an instrument like that and then doing really good the first few months and then maybe just clean it after I play it every time.
Yeah.
But it's like a 5-minute, 10-minute routine. So
I could see myself being pretty good for a few weeks and then gradually not doing my instrument any favors anymore after that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as part of the life of a professional musician, is keeping your instrument well cared for.
To me, these are some of the most beautiful, complex looking instruments. They almost look like something from a Star Wars movie. You know what I mean? Especially that French horn. Just looking at the French horn.
Oh yeah.
All these little brackets and valves and knobs, and it's so beautiful and so cool. And really, to me, that is my favorite sounding brass instrument, is the French horn.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I think it has this really kind of warm, mellow, smooth tone to it,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's known for that. In fact, it was the first brass instrument to be included in the orchestra, and that was kind of what brought it to the dance, was that warm, smooth, a sound. And one day we'll do a podcast on orchestration, and we can get into all of the sort of the extra musical connotations the instruments have, the tradition of horns being associated with the hunt in Europe and how that still holds true even today. And trumpets being instruments of heroism, from the time of the Roman Empire, when you would announce Caesar's entrance with trumpets, right? All the way up until today, when you see the Transformers movie and Optimus Prime's main theme is in the trumpet because he's the hero.
Yeah.
Things like that. We'll get into that in some podcast at some point, because it's a little bit of a fun subject for me to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that it might be nice for us just to real quick, because we did talk a little bit about the texture and the sound of the French horn, and then you said that the trumpet were kind of more kind of heroic and fanfare, right?
Yeah.
Or otherwise called the cornet, the trumpet, right?
Cornet is a kind of trumpet.
And then the trombone, we kind of described the mechanics, but how would you describe the sound of a trombone? To me, the brass instruments all have kind of a general kind of timbre to them.
Yeah. Well, the one thing it now occurs to me we completely neglected to say about the trombone is that it is in fact a bass instrument.
Ah. It plays on
so
the.
It plays on the bass clef. It is a bass instrument. And so it has a lower pitch and has it's just short of growly. It doesn't have the warmth of the French horn. And it doesn't necessarily have the brilliance of the trumpet, although it certainly can. Think about to me, it's sort of like the brilliance of the trumpet, but in a lower register, in the bass register.
I see.
And the
I
bass
see.
trombone really doesn't play lower than the tenor trombone. The difference is largely timbral. It's thicker. It's more of a sine wave sound, whereas the actual trombone has a little more sharpness to it.
Okay, like some more overtones involved, where
Right, yeah.
maybe the bass trombone is more fundamental, maybe.
More sine wave-ish.
Okay.
That may not mean anything to to some people, but
Okay.
but just kind of warmer and
A quick demonstration. Here's what I think a sine wave kind of sounds like. Ooh. And then here's if you add overtones. Ooh. You know what I mean?
Beautiful demonstration.
That's square wave. Saw wave.
Beautiful demonstration.
Yes,
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think a sine waves is more round.
Yeah. Kind of more of a round sound. Yeah. And then of course the tuba is just very, very low typically. It can actually play very high, and people don't realize that. But it's thought of as being a very low, boomy kind of bass sound.
Did you have a tuba in that intro and the outro music?
No, those were all. Are you talking about facets of being?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, those were all horns.
So the tuba has the capacity to either be kind of ominous as well, but also kind of comedic at times, wouldn't you say?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's just that real bassy boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
What's a good tuba line? Any good tuba pieces we know of? Good famous tuba? It's hard to think about. Star Wars, I'm sure. Darth Vader shows up.
No, it's that's actually in the trumpets.
Crap.
The tuba isn't famous for solo repertoire.
Right.
But maybe Elephants on Parade. I'd have to go back and listen to it again. But
well, yeah, the tuba is just that's where the bass is mainly.
Yeah. It often doubles the contrabass in orchestral textures. So just really low, even lower than the trombones often.
I see. So would the trombone kind of liken to the cello, maybe, if we're kind of comparing family members?
Yeah.
The trumpet might be more in the violin register.
Which would be more in the violin register?
Trumpet. Or would that be more viola?
Sure.
I don't know.
Trumpet is a treble instrument.
They're probably not lining these up perfectly by pitch, I know, but if we're just talking about
not. The violin can play much higher than the trumpet is a general rule. But yeah.
And no, if you're writing for these instruments, don't make the mistake I did. Know what their ranges are so that the person playing the instrument doesn't have to sing the note that they can't play.
That happened to you? Yeah,
man. Yeah, we talked about it a while ago. Our friend Jason Kuykendall. But yeah, I wrote a part for it was a part that I guess they wanted to do a four instrument just passage in music, and they were gonna actually have students play the parts. And then I wrote something for the French horn, and the note that I wrote was higher than the horn itself could play. And when he got up to that note, he went and just kind of sang it with his mouth. And I applauded him for that to this day.
Yeah, talk about a creative solution. That was kind of awesome. Yeah.
If the teacher wasn't really listening, I might have gotten away with that.
Yeah, well, this is why we're going to do some orchestration episodes of the podcast very soon, so we can talk about these things.
Oh, I'm excited about that. Are you ready for that, Matt?
Yeah.
Orchestration?
Whenever
That's cool.
I'm ready when you're ready.
Let's get into that soon, because I think I've had some other people ask about that. And
excellent. Yeah, we'll put that on the docket for sure. It already was on the docket. We'll move it up.
Yeah. And it's cool to have these talks about these instruments, especially the ones that I know very little about and kind of getting really interested in getting to know better.
Yeah, and if you play any of these instruments, definitely send us contact us and let us know your thoughts. We are all music students, and we are always eager to learn more.
Or maybe you just want to share a spittle story that we can all laugh at like a bunch of 12-year-olds.
Like a bunch of juvenile 8th graders. Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be fun too. This is, I guess, the point where we might recap, but this is not really theory or complex issues. This is just good storytelling, in my opinion. So go back and hear it again.
Yes, absolutely. And take care of those trumpets and horns.
Yeah.
And tubas and trombones. And euphoniums and coronets and everything else.
conches, didgeridoos. Brass players out there, we hope we did you justice, and let us know what you think at info@musicstudent101.com.
Yep, and don't forget to check out our Patreon site. Yeah, a little contribution of just a little bit gets you extra goodies, just a little bit more, and you get to ask us a question, and we will answer it in a patron-only episode.
Absolutely. So until next time, happy holidays, and we will see you in the new year, 2021.
See you soon.
We hope you learned something today. We know we did. Be you brass players or not, if you have any comments or questions, please send them to info@musicstudent101.com.